In fact, horror was never shown on TV. The Ramsays were the first who brought horror to TV and in your homes. So Zee Horror Show, we later on it was also called Unhoni, and we made almost 365 episodes, and it ran successfully for almost 7 years. And believe it or not, we got a call from Zee TV once, and they called us to the office and they said, we want you to tone down a horror just a bit. And we were like, this is the first horror show. Why would you want us to tone it down? In fact, you should tell us to take it a notch up and make it more scary. And they said no, because the kids are loving it. Yeah, we actually are already in talks with a couple of good big production houses and also OTT platforms to revive something on the lines of Zee Horror Show.
Welcome to Director's Cut, a Bollywood Crypt podcast series where we speak to various filmmakers from genres such as horror, science fiction and fantasy. Today we are speaking to Deepak Ramsay, the famed filmmaker of Zee Horror Show and Atma, and he's been an AD on many cult horror movies such as Veerana and Bandarwaza. So Deepak, welcome to Director's Cut. And can you tell us a little bit about your background?
So, I'm Deepak Ramsay, Deepak Tulsi Ramsay. I hail from the Ramsay family, the family that is well known and synonymous with horror films. In fact, we as a family are the ones who brought the horror genre or the supernatural genre to India. It was the seven brothers, the famous seven brothers, along with the father who trained them in every different field of production. And together they have done more than 60 films and I think about more than 500 episodes of various horror and supernatural genres.
So Deepak, you have been an integral part of the very cult TV series called Zee Horror Show.
Yes.
And could you just tell us how you started out with Zee Horror Show, and also how did Zee Horror Show come to be?
Actually, around the late 80s and early 90s, Zee TV was, it's setting its feet in India. And my dad, Tulsi Ramsay, he had gone to meet Subhash Chandraji, and he had gone to sell the satellite rights for a couple of films. And they had a nice meeting, and things took off from there. And Subhashji told Dad that why don't you start like a horror series, like something like the ones that you have seen in the West, and basically bring horror to TV. And it was a very unique idea, and we couldn't have done it because earlier there was only Doordarshan. So Zee TV was the only non-nationalized channel that was setting its feet. And yes, that is how the idea of Zee Horror Show came about. And the idea was that it will be 4 or 5 episodes to complete a story of horror and the supernatural genre.
What convinced the Ramsays to move from the big screen to the small screen?
Actually, the Ramsays were very comfortable in the space of the big screen. By then, they had completed almost, I would say, about 42 films. And they were in the process of, getting on with the scripting and of the other next films and stuff, when the idea of the Zee Horror Show came about. So they were very skeptical. I mean, they were like, how do we manage the budgets? And unlike cinema, where you can take a little extra time and do things at your own pace, TV did not give them that freedom. I mean, if the series were to start, they would have to have a bank of episodes, back to back. I mean, the first 4 episodes would be followed by a next story, and then so on and so forth. So they were very not sure about that idea, because would they be able to cater, because they were used to making films. A film would take about a year or two, and they would release in the 3rd year, and then they would go to the next film. And over here, we were talking about the duration of actually a film. If you consider 20 minutes, 25 minutes per episodes into 5 is almost the length of a full feature film. So they were not sure if they could deliver that kind of content at that kind of space, because horror takes time. The building up of the script, the characterization, the artist, then comes the post production, which is the most important part in horror films. So they were very skeptical about the idea that they should be getting into this.
How did how did they get rid of their apprehension? What did it take to convince them to, do this TV series?
Initially, they told them that yes, we will try. It all began with only a 13 or a 26 episode thing. They said we'll see how it goes, and we'll see if how the audience likes it and stuff. And yes, then they started building a bank of series, and the first of the lot was Dastak with Archana Puran Singh and Pankaj Dheer, and the famous scenes where Archana's head is on the dining table, and those were some of the key sequences that really bought Zee Horror Show the recognition it had.
And can you tell us how you got involved in the Zee Horror Show?
So, like I said, the idea was to make the first 26 episodes. So, once the series started, it was a runaway success. Right from go, it was, the moment Dastak started, it was a rage. Everybody was talking about it. In fact, we had taken the theme music of Purana Mandir, the main theme music of Samri in Purana Mandir, and used it as the theme music of Zee Horror Show. That theme music became so iconic that every time on Friday at about 9:30 when the series would play, everybody would just know it's Zee Horror Show time and go and switch on your TVs.
Could you tell us how you were involved with the Zee Horror Show, and how many episodes did you all guys shoot in total?
So after the first couple of episodes and stories, about 26 or 32 episodes later, Sham and Tulsi decided that there was a lot more to handle than they were usually able to, and I was just setting my feet, and that is the first time that I actually got a chance to direct the first Zee Horror Show, and that is my first Zee Horror Show. And this was a story called Dar. It was about a character who just gets up from at his cremation ground, and he comes back to life, and they bring him back home, and he's not the same.
Very interesting. So, can you tell us what was the atmosphere while shooting these episodes, and how did it differ from your films?
So, the Ramsay is a big family, and most of the brothers are involved in all the filmmaking aspects. So the sets were always filled with the Ramsay brothers and their sons, and my other cousins also were involved in direction and other aspects of the filmmaking. So it was a very happy atmosphere. It was almost like a family festival that was going on there. But yes, I would say the pace at which the series were made, it was much faster than how we would handle a regular shoot for the films. I mean, time was a constraint, and a lot of pre-planning went even after the shoots were over, so that that we are well sure about what we are going to do the next day. So a lot of planning went in the making.
So could you tell us how many episodes in total were made, and how long did it take to make these episodes?
So Zee Horror Show, we later on it was also called Unhoni, and we made almost 365 episodes, and it ran successfully for almost 7 years. The TRP of the show was right up there even the time they took it off air, because then they wanted to do something different, and new people came in Zee, and new ideas, and they wanted to start something else on those lines.
So do you remember any of the successful episodes that created a wave at the TRP?
Yeah, well, there were quite a few. In fact, to begin with, the very first episode, the very first story, Dastak, was a runaway hit. Then there were other very interesting stories like Chandalika, Jadu Tona, Samri, and yeah, there were quite a few actually. And in fact, the challenge was that after every 4 episodes, to bring in something different, to bring in something more appealable to the audiences, to bring in something more that you could connect with. Because the whole idea of the short stories was, it takes it takes the audiences together, and you experience the horror. You take 4 episodes and you enjoy the ride, and right after 4 or 5 episodes you are now looking at all different characters, a new different story, a new different ghost.
So, were there any popular actors who acted in the series? Do you remember any of them?
Yes, in fact, there were quite a few. I would say we started with Archana Puran Singh and Pankaj Dheer. Later on, Tarakesh Chauhan was there, Gajendra Chauhan was there, Javed Khan did quite a few of episodes. Poonam Das Gupta is one such actress. In fact, the list can go on. There were quite a few of them. Ajinkya Dev was one of the popular ones too.
One thing that has always intrigued me is the beginning of Zee Horror Show, where you have this CGI kind of mask, and I think it's the first time people saw this graphic, So, what is the story behind that CGI mask?
Actually, it was the idea was somehow because all the other films would have the grandfather's name, the pioneer man who started all this, Shri F.U. Ramsay. And the idea was to give him, because we couldn't have F.U. Ramsay presence in ZTV, so the idea was to show him there in the form of CGI effect, that his blessings and his feel was there in every episode.
So this mask was based on...
It was not really a mask, it was more like a salutation that we gave him. It morphed out of nothing, and then it became a face, and then the rolling titles would begin.
So can you tell us if your actors who have been used to shooting, in your movies, were they apprehensive about the small screen? What did it take to convince them to, work for TV? Because back then, as far as I remember, a lot of the actors and actresses from the film industry were very hesitant about doing a TV show.
Initially, like you said, they were very apprehensive about doing, coming to a smaller screen, and the very glamour of a big film or the big screen always was there for the artist. And because of Doordarshan earlier, the small screen was considered low budget, and I wouldn't say outright boring, but yes, viewership was less. Unless it was a mythological serial like Ramayana or Mahabharata. So popularity for other serials were relatively much less. And yes, we had to convince the actors that we're doing something different, and it's going to be, it's going to be something that's never happened on TV before. In fact, horror was never shown on TV. The Ramsays were the first who brought horror to TV and in your homes.
So, were there any fresh new faces you launched in Zee Horror Show who went on to become more well known in the horror genre, or maybe in the TV serial era?
Yeah, a lot of faces, in fact, a lot of new talent were launched, and in many series, I would not remember right now, but yeah, a lot of them were launched. And like Ramsays had a style of getting newcomers in, even in the films. A lot of these new talents were offered different roles, whether it was a Siraj Mustafa or a Tarakesh Chauhan, who's now very popular, but at that time it was his nascent start. And yeah, I would say yes, a lot of people did get popular after Zee Horror Show.
So when you made films, you had to recreate locations, you had to, find the perfect spot for months together when you were shooting, the big movies. So how did you manage to get these locations and sets? And I assume that you were shooting episodes like every week. So how would you get a new location and a new set? Was it only indoor based? Was it outdoor based? How did you all find so many places in such a short time?
So we had, a whole list of locations marked down, so things would become easier then. Yes, like you said, location recce and outdoor shootings out of Bombay was not possible, because like I said, it was a running show, and you had to be here shooting in the day, and then we would have post-production to check and deliver at night, because every Friday was a new episode. And we did a lot of shooting in Bombay studios like SL Studios, Film City, and for the locations, there were a lot of these bungalows in Juhu and around Andheri West and Lokhandwala, where we could hire the location, and sometimes even simultaneously shoot 2 stories at the same time.
Very interesting. Could you tell us about the entire shooting process of Zee Horror Show, and how long would it take to like edit an episode? How long would it take to launch the next episode? Like, it had to work like clockwork basically,
Yeah.
right? So could you just give a breakdown how that worked?
So we would have the Ramsays had this particular shift that we were very notorious for. We would do a 2 to 10 shift. The shoot would start at 2 o'clock and would end at around 10:30 in the night. So ideally, why that particular shift was chosen was so that we can get half of the shoot for the daytime, that's between 2 and 6, and if we wanted to shoot a night portion or an outdoor portion, we would have the second half with night effect. Another reason for that particular shift was that after 10:30 we could immediately go to the edit suites. We could see what has been edited, we could make the corrections, sit down, check the background music, the effects if any, and sometimes if needed, then check the final mixing as well. Then these tapes, I mean, it was shot on high band and beta, so tapes at that time. So then these tapes would be sent in the morning for mastering. Once these tapes were mastered, then they would go to ZTV, and then it would be dispatched to Hong Kong for telecast.
Wasn't there a difficulty in doing retakes? I mean, how did that work? I mean, in a film you're able to shoot it 3-4 times, but in an episode where you're like churning literally episode every week, wasn't it difficult to like shoot? Was there a restriction on the shooting that you could do only these many retakes and this many shots and stuff like that?
No, in fact, I would go to an extent and say that the very format of shooting on TV and on digibeta was very nice, because we did not have to worry about the expensive raw stock. So when you shoot a film and you have an artist who's giving you multiple retakes, you're wasting a lot of film. The film is the most expensive. I mean, raw stock in terms of India was very expensive. With due respect to the beta and the high band tapes, every time we get a retake, we could even retain the retake, because we could use bits and portions of that would either help in the scene or maybe get an insertion from that, and we didn't have to worry about the raw stock, because the tapes were an hour each, and you could even go back and rerun on them.
Wasn't there a fear that the quality of the content might come down, considering you all are shooting like so many episodes in 365 days a year, and you said it went for 7 years?
Yeah.
Which shows the success. Then how did you all maintain that quality of the stories, and how did you all maintain the roster of actors? Wouldn't they be caught in different shoots and stuff, since they were working not just for y'all people? How did you maintain that tight schedule while filming this?
So we had 2 units basically. Shyam Ramsay and Tulsi Ramsay were handling 1 unit with Gangu Ramsay as the DOP, and I was handling another unit totally independent of the first unit, with my DOP Mr. Hemant Sharma. And what was happening was we were both shooting simultaneously. They were doing a different story, I was doing a different story. So what was happening in that is they get to work with a different set of artists. They complete the project and get it ready for mastering. I do the same way, but since I had a much younger team, I could do much more than was required, and in the same amount of time we could do maybe double the work and stuff. So since there were 2 units, the 3 directors working on a similar project, the monotony aspect wouldn't come in, because we wouldn't share the story except the one line that this is what I'm working on, and the ideas were totally separate and individual.
Who were the stories mostly written by?
The stories were mostly written by Shyam Ramsay and me, and we had other writers as well who would come on the sets and probably do the dialogues and stuff. But the basic concept and the basic stories were usually both of us.
Considering you all shot for 7 years, wasn't there like a fatigue shooting these TV episodes? And I mean, what was life like? Did you have any breaks? Did you all have normal lives when you all were shooting so much?
No, I would say I mean, it was tiring, no doubt about it. It was continuous work. It was work almost 28, 29 days of the month, month after month. And the breather was, of course, that Tulsi and Sham were doing one unit and I was doing one unit. So we could basically build up a bank of episodes, and at the same time make sure the content was different, the taking was different, and the styles were totally different. But like you said, yes, fatigue did come in, and it got towards the end a little bit monotonous. But then it was work, and it was good work, and it was well appreciated. In fact, I would go to the extent of saying that we made more money on the television rating points rather than the serial itself. I mean, Zee was right on top with Zee Horror Show, and besides Zee Horror Show, there was only two other serials that Zee was recognized for.
So, once you all completed the incarnation of Zee Horror Show, what were the other TV series that you all shot for, and what were the reasons for moving to a different TV series?
So there was action TV series that we had worked with Zee on, and it was on the lines of an Indian superhero. It was called Zimbo. So the character was based on Batman, and we tried to incorporate as much action as we could. But since it was an action series, it was a very expensive one, and it had a short run of about I believe 13 or 26 episodes, and then we had to kind of take it off because like I said, it was very expensive, and when you're doing an action series and you have a limited budget, so a lot of limitations come in. So Zimbo was one such. Then we actually went ahead and did the first Nagin. Ramsays were the ones who brought the concept of Nagin to TV. I believe Ekta Kapoor followed it up, but a very few people know that Nagin was actually introduced by us. It was very lavishly shot. It was multi-star cast like the original Nagin film, and it did very well. It again, like Zee Horror Show, had a lot of success, but the problem was towards the end of the series, we had problems with NGO about using snakes and animal, and all that animal right movement came in. So we had to kind of back off from that, but we still managed to complete the series and had a 52 episode run.
Were there any other series that you all directed besides this?
Yes, in fact, we did for Zee also. We did Saturday Suspense, and for Sub TV, we had done a couple of Cough episodes. We even ventured into making a love story, one of those Rishte type of series for Zee. Yeah, and that about sums it up.
So that's a huge chunk of work that you all guys have been. Probably the audience doesn't know in this present day that you'll be responsible for such a huge amount of work. So if you take that time period which all did TV, how many years was that?
I think it was almost a decade. A lot of people ask me that why did the Ramsays not make movies after Mahakal in the early 90s or the late 80s. And I personally wanted to tell them we were always there. I mean, if we were not there on the big screen, we were there on the small screen, scaring you the same way that we used to. And in fact, 10 years of TV is a big time. And the kind of content and the kind of success that we got on TV. And you had to move off the big screen to come to the small screen. We couldn't be everywhere.
So, was there ever a temptation to return back to the big screen?
So the big screen's always been, it's that big, the whole big feeling of doing it on a grand scale with no timelines. The budgets are much bigger. You can experiment a lot more, and you don't have to churn it out day after day, week after week. So yes, we did come back to the big screen after Zee Horror Show.
And could you tell us about what you all did on the big screen?
Yeah, so we had done so much Zee TV and Zee Horror Show for almost 7 years, and then Nagin, we wanted to give a horror a gap. So I directed the first romantic light comedy film from the House of Ramsays called Koi Mere Dil Mein Hai. It had good star cast, big names like Priyanshu, Diya Mirza, Rakesh Papad, Neha, Kader Khan, etc., etc. And that was an out and all romantic film. But the stamp of Ramsays, the brand is such that even when the audiences were watching the film, post interval was saying it's a fabulous film, but where's the monster?
So, do you have any memorable incidents that you can recollect from Zee Horror Show? And were there any supernatural incidents or something that terrified the actors or terrified you all guys?
I would definitely I would definitely like to talk about a very interesting incident that happened. So those days we were using contact lenses, which were not the soft ones like you get today. So they were specially made by a eye doctor, and they were hard lenses. And they had a very small, tiny hole in the center of the lens for the artist to see. But like I said, they were hard lenses, and they had to be put on the eyes, and but there was a restriction that it should not be worn for more than 60 minutes or about an hour and a half max. Now we were shooting a very important sequence, and we lost track of time. And one of the heroines, one of the most favorite heroines of the Ramsays, Poonam Das Gupta, she had been wearing the lenses, and she didn't realize in her performance, and the sequence was a climax that we were shooting. And later on we realized that she's been actually wearing the lenses for more than 3 hours. And we told her take it off and take a breather and whatever. And at the time of pack up, there was a little bit of a chaos and panic, because the makeup man couldn't remove the lenses. They were just stuck in her eyes, and she panicked. It was paining, her eyes were watering, her eyes were red, and there was chaos on the set. And it was late in the night, so very difficult to get the doctor even to come at that point. And the whole 15-20 minute situation got very out of hand, and there was more panic than anything else. So we made everybody calm, and I came to the rescue, believe it or not, and we told Poonam to relax, breathe, and we gently tried to get the lenses off, and with the grace of God, it came off, and she was very relaxed after that.
That's very nice to hear. So Deepak, kids were a big fan of the horror show. I remember being, in my teens back then, watching the show. And how did you all manage to keep it R-rated and, still appeal to the kids and not, scare off the parents or down your TRP ratings? What did you all do for that?
So, horror is such a genre that besides the fact that it attracts adults and youngsters alike, kids, they just get pulled with horror. I mean, which kid has not enjoyed a good spooky story? So Zee Horror Show was just that. It was horror available to them every Friday night, a new story in their house. So whether they hide behind pillows or behind their mothers, but they would see Horror Show, and it became quite a rage with kids. I still meet people and say I'm such a big fan of Zee Horror Show, and I've watched it as a kid and this and that. And believe it or not, we got a call from Zee TV once, and they called us to the office, and they said, we want you to tone down a horror just a bit. And we were like, this is the first horror show. Why would you want us to tone it down? In fact, you should tell us to take it a notch up and make it more scary. And they said, no, because the kids are loving it. And we don't want to scare them so much. We want to make it more interesting for them. So we brought in elements where Samri was created. This was not the typical Ramsay Samri. This was more on the lines of Aladdin and the genie. So it was horror. It was about Zee Horror Show. But it was about the same 3 wishes that he gets. But the thing is, at the end of the 3 wishes, the hero has to be, he has to be killed or he has to be taken away. So we had the kids in mind. We had the horror in mind, and we had to balance it out in such a way that everybody enjoys it.
What about the masks and the prosthetics, I think you would have needed quite a bit of effects and prosthetics, as I mentioned. How did you all manage to obtain this, and do any of these artifacts still remain from any of the shoots?
So prosthetics was at a very nascent stage, and we had a lot of backlog stuff from our films, which we used quite a bit. Even the props from the films were used. You might have seen the Trishuls and the signs of God to defeat the devil. They were all from the films. So with regard to prosthetics and makeup, this was all in-house. We had a couple of good makeup artists that time, and one of them is G.A. James. And while he was working with us, he was also improvising on the sets, and it was also a learning curve for him, because regular makeup anybody can do, but when you want to create a gothic look and a very believable gothic look, it takes a lot of pains and a lot of trial and error. So like I said, these 2 to 10 shifts, they really worked for us, and it left a lot of time for even the makeup to be created. So what would happen is, we would call the main character who would play the gothic character at about 9 in the morning. So he would have about 3 to 4 hours ahead of us to come ready with the makeup on the sets by about 2 o'clock. But yes, like I said, it was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of hard work and a lot of inputs from all the aspects of coming from the cinematographer, coming in from the other directors, coming in from me, and all that created the different gothic looks that you've seen in Zee Horror Show.
Very interesting. So literally the monsters kept changing every week, and you all had to build new monsters while on the run.
Yeah.
So considering Zee Horror Show was basically a show that started it all, especially for the horror genre on TV in India.
Yeah.
What were the kind of VFX available at that time, and considering that you all had to do it so often, how did you all manage to get it done?
So VFX was at a very nascent stage again. It was, I would say it was just taking off. There were not a lot of artists who could do a lot of VFX, and whatever they were doing would be okay for mythological series or mythological films, and they would get away with it. But to create VFX for a proper horror film or a horror series, it needs to be perfect, otherwise it becomes like a joke. I mean, you would laugh at it because it wouldn't look real. So for Zee Horror Show, initially we used very little. In fact, I would go ahead and say that we started the very first school of VFX with one of so-called IT consultants, and he started doing VFX especially for our series.
Very interesting. And can you tell me what were the influences of Zee Horror Show? Were there any books, or since you all were writing so many scripts, and the look of the monster, did you all pick up any references from anywhere, or how was it made?
So we had to be inspired. I mean, there were so many episodes that we did. So we did see a lot of international series in those times. I wouldn't say that we copied them or something, but just for inspiration, we did see a lot of Twilight Zone. There was a series called Rocky House of Horror. The Rocky Horror Show. That is where the title Zee Horror Show got its lineage. And yeah, there were Tales from the Crypt, and there were certain Hammer House of Horror shows that inspired us. So a few of the gothic characters were taken from there. But ideally, the story and the script line were all Indian and all Desi.
Very nice. So would you say, if Zee Horror Show were to be remade today, what was the changes that you would personally see if you got a chance to remake it again?
Oh, I think if Zee Horror Show were made today, we could do a much better job. We could make it much more brilliant than it already was. the use of VFX now, it is so brilliant and so easily available and accessible. We would use AI. I mean, I don't know why people shy away from AI. If you use it right, and if you use it in the right context, and a few scenes to enhance looks and feel wherever it's required, I think it can do a brilliant job. Background music, and I would say even sound effects. I mean, a lot has changed since the 90s, and I think Zee Horror Show done now in 2025 can be done brilliantly.
So, do you feel there are any kind of TV series right now that you appreciate and kind of brings you the feel of Zee Horror Show in the modern era?
I think there are a lot of nice series that we've come across. I wouldn't really put my finger on any of them, but yeah, a lot of them that made me feel that, you know, we should do a second season of Zee Horror Show. Even the latest Tales from the Crypt, and yeah, a lot of these really inspire us to get back in action with Zee Horror Show.
So, do you think there is a chance of, you know, reinvigorating the brand and creating a Zee Horror Show for the modern era?
Yeah, we actually are already in talks with a couple of good big production houses, and also OTT platforms, to revive something on the lines of Zee Horror Show, something that we are good at and something that we know the audiences would like. And I've seen a couple of the ones on Netflix, but I would say we can definitely do a better job.
So, Deepak, are there any last words you would like to talk or say about Zee Horror Show to the audience, to the modern audience, or to the audience that hasn't seen the show?
I would say a big thank you to all our fans for giving us so much love, right from the moment that we did our films till then, till we came to you know, to your home in your TVs with the Zee Horror Show. A big thank you for all the love and all the continued praises. Even today, we have a lot of fan clubs of Zee Horror Show pushing us, you know, requesting us that we should have a second season. And yeah, I would say big thank you to all of them. And I would also tell them that wait, it's not over yet. We are coming with something like the Zee Horror Show. Maybe it would not be called the Zee Horror Show, but yes, we are coming up with short stories very soon.
So that's it from here. And if you're a producer, you should probably get in touch with Mr. Deepak Ramsay to discuss another successful anthology in the vein of the old Zee Horror Show, which we all remember. If you enjoyed this episode, please join us for further episodes of Director's Cut. This is Sandesh from Bollywood Crypt, signing out.